Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream are made possible by the generous support of PNC and the Raskin Family Fund, with additional funding from Cleveland State University, Robert Conrad, and the Payne Fund.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Stephanie Jansky, Director of Programming and a proud member. It's my pleasure to introduce today's forum, a conversation on the evolution of the restaurant industry in Cleveland. It's no secret that Cleveland has become one of the Midwest's top dining destinations. The national food press, Gourmet, Food and Wine, and Esquire have praised Cleveland's chefs and innovative food scene. The New York Times, Travel and Leisure, and Fodders all put Cleveland on their must-travel list, largely on the merit of our restaurants. Despite the awards and accolades, the continuous, often anticipated parade of new restaurant openings, think back to Mabel's or Arcadian, or the news that old favorites are expanding to new locations. Where is Barrio going next? It can be argued that the city's restaurants are in a tenuous position. This restaurant explosion means chefs and owners are scrambling to obtain and retain good talent while attracting customers, both from across the community and around the country, in an increasingly competitive and crowded market. And it doesn't always work. Old stalwarts and new concepts often meet the same fate. This month alone, Hard Rock Cafe closed after nearly 20 years downtown. Crop Kitchen in Uptown also shuttered its doors after just 18 months. It begs the question, has our city reached restaurant saturation? There are probably no two people in Cleveland better equipped to have this discussion than Zach Bruell and Doug Trattner. More than 30 years ago, Cleveland Magazine credited chef and restaurateur Zach Bruell with introducing the area to an emerging West Coast trend of bistro dining and fusion cuisine. He brought the concept from his work with famed chef Michael McCarty of the landmark eatery Michael Santa Monica, a restaurant recognized for influencing dining attitudes throughout North America with its California Nouvelle cuisine. Mr. Bruell, a Shaker Heights native, imported the new style to his hometown, where he opened Z Contemporary Cuisine in the early 1980s. He eventually sold the restaurant, got back into the industry in 2004 with the opening of Parallax in Cleveland's Tremont neighborhood. Since that time, Mr. Bruell has opened 8 additional restaurants within the city limits, serves as a consultant for 2 others, and established a restaurant-style catering and events company. He's joined in conversation with dining editor and New York Times-best-selling cookbook author Doug Trattner. His work, which includes food, beverage, travel, and culture, has been published locally, nationally, and internationally in publications such as Food Network Magazine, The Plain Dealer, Eater, the Miami Herald, and the Globe and Mail, among many, many others. Mr. Trattner's work on Michael Symon's Carnivore and 5 and 5 earned him back-to-back Times best-selling author awards, while his long-standing role as dining editor garnered him Alt Weekly's Best Food Writing Award. He also has amassed the world's largest restaurant menu collection, topping out at more than 1,000 printed menus. I will let him tell that story. But ladies and gentlemen, members and friends of the City Club of Cleveland, it is my pleasure to welcome Zach Bruell and Doug Trattner.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I'm really here just to try to keep Zach from talking the entire time.
1,000 menus?
So, 1,000 menus. But
that's 1,000 meals?
Sure. Of course I've eaten at 1,000 meals. So when you started, I was still a baby. But when you started, when I started writing in Cleveland in about 2001 or 2, you were working for somebody else, right? You didn't even have a
Yeah, I had stepped off the stage.
And in the last, since 2004, when you opened Parallax, you've opened 25, no, I'm just kidding, 8 different restaurants, 9 different restaurants?
We start out with 25 employees at Parallax, and presently we have 470 employees. So we grew fairly fast, but there was a reason for it. In that first lifetime, Z, I worked 10 years straight, 90 hours a week. And anybody that's ever burnt out, that sticks with you. and it sticks with you for the rest of your life. So when I came back in 2004, I was fearful of that, and I was not easy to work with in that first lifetime.
You still are?
But I didn't want to burn out again, and I was fearful of that. And I realized the way to avoid that would be to grow and give people a reason to grow, and that's how you'd retain employees.
And that's a great segue. So no one knows this problem more than you. You have, like you said, you have 8 or 9 restaurants. You deal with a ton of talent, labor needs. You've got back of the house, front of the house, and finding those people, finding good help, keeping those people. That's one of the hardest challenges right now facing restaurateurs in Cleveland.
Well, definitely, and it's always been. I mean, that's just not a Cleveland phenomena.
Right.
It's like that all over the United States. And you're only as good as your worst employee. So the idea is to retain people and to give them a vehicle to grow.
Right.
And you have to pay them well, or if they're service staff, they have to make money. So there's this balancing act that can be somewhat difficult. Turnover to me is death. Turnover to me equals that burnout, because that means that I have to get in the fray and be part of it, which I do anyway.
For so long, you've been able to move people up and through the system to new restaurants because you have continued to open new restaurants, and so that allows your people to find those avenues of growth that you've been talking about. What happens, A, when you stop doing that, or B, other operators who aren't in a position to do that?
I can't speak to other operators, okay? I have to continually do it. To me, if you don't grow, you're dying. And that's part of what has fueled all of this. But if the staff doesn't have a vehicle to grow, they're going to move on. That's my take on it. And that's how this growth was fueled. And, you know, my job is to mentor people. My job is to help people better their lives. That's part of my job. And in the process, I can grow too. And
that's how the city's dining scene continues to grow, like you said. So, you know, chefs like you, Simon, Sawyer, Williams, Whalen, you know, Small, all these people are training cooks to become chefs who go on, if they can't, you know, continue to rise at their present location, they'll go on and open their own restaurant, which is why we've had such a great explosion of restaurants in the past 10, 15 years.
You know that my real passion is golf.
Right.
And in golf, it's passing on that knowledge. And there are no real secrets in golf. There's no real secrets in the restaurant business. It's passing on that knowledge. It's our responsibility to pass that on. The difficult part is to find the people with the passion that you want to pass that on to, because some people don't get that passion. That's where chefs get that reputation as being difficult.
Well, when we talk about talent, we're talking about, you know, two general categories: back of the house, front of the house. You know, maybe people think we're only talking about chefs, but waiters, managers, bartenders. That's also a challenge. These folks are also in short supply.
Everybody's in short supply, because the problem here is that the market hasn't expanded. When I came back in 2004, the labor situation had changed dramatically from my first lifetime. And my first lifetime, I was taking people and training them from scratch, which I thought would be the way to do it. But that's the harder way. That's the more difficult way. In 2004, there seemed to be a base to work from. There seemed to be a group of people that had moved back to Cleveland that wanted to learn. And now, 2016, and I've noticed it in the last 3-4 years, we've hit a wall again.
Yeah.
It's almost like I'm back to square one, and life is cyclical, and work can be cyclical. So now the way to go about it is to find people with a work ethic, people that have a passion and want to learn. So it's our responsibility to teach.
let's talk about like from the diner's point of view. So when I started writing about Cleveland food, the hardest part was, and my first editor told me it would. Anybody could write a review, but you've got that news column. You've got to churn out that news. New restaurants, all that, and it was really hard. Now I feel like I'm writing about a new restaurant once or twice a week, literally, and I have been for probably I feel like 5 to 8 years. Do you feel like the pace of new restaurants has accelerated in the last 5-8 years?
It appears to have, but I don't really pay attention to what's going on around me because I've got so much around me that I have to focus on that I just want to continually improve what I do. And I believe if I improve what I do, people will come back. Yes, Cleveland's a small market and people will flock to new restaurants, but restaurants are like, golf. It's first hole you birdie, the second hole you par, and all of a sudden there's a bogey, a double bogey, a triple bogey.
An albatross?
It's a marathon. It's 18 holes. It's not 3 holes.
Right.
And some people don't understand the marathon part of it. I equated myself years ago to Carol Channing. It's like I just kept working every shift,
right.
And it just didn't let up. So you've got to be prepared to do that. So, and if you don't have that mindset, you're not going to succeed.
Not to bring everybody in this room down, and you've said it yourself. You can't eat out a lot. You probably don't eat out.
I don't eat out at all, really.
I eat out all the time, and I don't eat out on Friday and Saturday nights usually. You'll never see me at one of your restaurants. Probably on a Friday or Saturday night. Certainly not for work because I know. That's when you guys are busy. You guys, it's said in the business, you make your money during the week. The weekends break even. I eat out on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays all the time, and I can tell you that a lot of these restaurants are 10, 15, 20, 25% full during the week.
The problem is, it's basic economics. The market, Cleveland's stable. The market, Cleveland's not, it's not going down, it's not going up, it's not growing. We need growth,
right.
Because every time a new restaurant opens up, that's another slice of the pie. So it's getting divvied up amongst a larger group now.
So the second most popular question I field after, what's your favorite restaurant is, are there too many restaurants and how can we support them? That's why we're all here in this room. And yes, population is stagnant, it's not growing, but we're eating out a lot more. We're getting married later, we're having kids later. Eating out has taken the place of other forms of entertainment. I mean, we do business in bars and restaurants now. So I feel like, although maybe that bubble is getting larger, we're supporting it in ways that we haven't been before. Cities are getting younger, and like we said, this isn't a situation unique to Cleveland. People are moving to urban centers across the country. So I feel like that's kind of, and there's more culinary tourism, right? So folks are coming to Cleveland because they've heard such great things about our food scene. They could be coming from Columbus, Pittsburgh, Toledo, Detroit, or LA. Are you seeing more of kind of that influx?
We always get a lot of out-of-town customers. But I think the lesson to be learned from last week is, when the RNC was here, was that Cleveland is a great city. Cleveland can pull off major conventions. So maybe we can become a convention destination city, get some tourism, and bring out-of-town business to Cleveland. To me, it would be simpler and easier probably to operate at the level that I operate in New York City than it is in Cleveland, because in Cleveland I have to depend on repeat business. In New York City, someone at my level can operate off of a business level of customers that are coming from out of town.
Right.
And if they get a mediocre meal, well, they're never coming back anyway. And there's so much tourism, it doesn't matter. And it sounds funny, but it's the reality of it. And I mean, you can go to New York and get some great meals. You can go to New York, go to some famous restaurants, well-known restaurants, and get some really mediocre meals, and they don't really care. the people that are in the restaurant industry in this town are on stage every day of the week. And it's got to be right because we're depending on the locals.
A lot of people have seen that Washington Post article that went around. They kind of knocked our service, a little bit. They said we had great restaurants, but the service had issues. And this guy is from Washington, D.C. He's got one of those old-time restaurant critic jobs where he still actually puts on a wig and tries to remain anonymous, as ridiculous as that is. I feel like the service here, obviously, I travel. When I travel, I find different levels of service, but our restaurants here are at a different level in terms of things are a lot more casual these days. There's a lot more quick casual. We're Midwesterners too, right? We have a different kind of ethos when it comes to, just chill out, man. It's just dinner, right?
Well, when I came back and opened Parallax in 2004, I realized service is probably the most important piece of the equation. You could serve great food, but if the service stinks, people aren't coming back. But what is great service? What is good service? Service to me is timeliness, being hospitable, which
not too friendly.
You don't want to be too friendly, but you don't want to be too distant. Now, I would imagine that you go to a city like Washington, D.C., and there's that distance. Yes, Cleveland is a different market. Is it more difficult to find qualified people? Of course. It's been diluted, and it's up to us, once again, to train people.
I found it really ironic and illustrative that one of the restaurants he called out for having great service is Edwin's. And this is a restaurant that employs ex-cons, right? So he is teaching them. Brandon is taking these people and he's training them. He's teaching them both front of the house and back of the house. So that lets me believe that anybody can, almost anybody with the right attitude, like you said. Why? So all these restaurants who are griping about having a difficult time finding people, what's standing in the way of training them and teaching them?
It's the patience. Now, I've been accused of having zero patience.
I think the term was the patience of a gnat, maybe, right?
Really? But I know there's one side of my brain knows that I have to train these people, and that's the whole deal. That's a training facility.
Yeah.
So we have to train it. It's our responsibility if we want to continue in this industry. And it wouldn't be different in any other city. As I said, the problems are national. It's not just Cleveland.
So you continue to grow. People, I think we talk about how can a restaurant set themselves up for success. Do you have to continue growing like Eric Williams or Barrio, or you get these economies of scale? You get better prices when you buy them. I think one chef said, you don't make money when you sell food, you make money when you buy it, and that makes sense. You have the ability because you have all these things.
Well, yes, I have the economies of scale, but I don't make it easy on myself because I have no duplication of menu.
Right.
There's nothing on one menu that's on another menu, so I don't make it easy on myself. Growing has a lot of difficulties to it. Going from 25 employees to 470 employees, there's a lot of difficulties with that. A lot of personal difficulties with, everybody's got a life. One of the reasons I can attract people is that I remember in my mind that burnout. And one of the things I do with my management team is I don't allow them to overwork themselves. And I don't want them to burn out, because if they burn out, they're leaving.
Some chefs might look at you and all, the other chefs in this room and heck, all the chefs in Cleveland and say, I don't stand a chance by opening a restaurant these days because I'm competing with, these bigger, more established restaurant groups, and they ask, is it even possible? And I think it is possible to make a go of having, if you were truly the chef and you have your own restaurant, that's maybe one of the only ways to do it, because you immediately cut your labor in half close because you're the chef, right?
Well, if you're stubborn and you have some sort of goal.
And don't need to make $1 million, maybe.
Right. I'm not, people look at me thinking that I'm, Mr. Moneybags, but I'm not. I just have this goal. I have an idea of what it takes to do it, and there is no let up. If you let up, that's when you fail.
I think small is the new big. I've been saying it for a while. I think I'm wrong though. But and I'm not always, I'm not always going to a Simon Sawyer or Bruell restaurant. I mean, I have to write about a different restaurant every week. So it's going to be the little Thai place in Lakewood or the little, Vietnamese somewhere else. And these places, they're good operations, they're small, they're nimble,
small can work if you don't have to depend on a ton of labor, and if your lease works. If you have this huge nut to crack right out of the gate, you're not going to make it. And that's where the failure can start, is signing a deal that doesn't really make economic sense. I spend a lot of time poring over a lease, and it's not fun doing that.
No, and you're in a position probably to fight back, whereas other people can't. But,
exactly.
But that's actually a good point. So as these restaurant groups like Melt and Barrio and others continue to grow, and I'm talking ones that kind of do one thing and duplicate it over again. When a developer is building a place like Pinecrest or Anywhere or Detroit Shore, they're not going to give an unknown name a chance. They're going to call in somebody who they know is going to hit it out of the park. So as a diner, we suffer because we lose out on...
There's a catch-22.
On maybe something new and unique.
There's a catch-22. I mean, the reason I have sort of succeeded is because I've gotten involved in deals that the leases have been favorable, so that when you do hit the down times, 2008, you can survive. I mean, otherwise there's a revolving door. I have a friend who's in the business, and I won't name him, but he moved his operation, and he was having trouble dealing with the landlord before he even opened the door. He said, and I offered to talk to the landlord for him, and I said, look, this has to work for both of you. It can't be a one-sided deal. It's not about the landlord. The landlord is building up value in their real estate. They have to understand the risk that a restaurateur is taking or a chef is taking. The risk is huge.
Well, we just saw, Steve Schmoller shutter Crop Kitchen over at Uptown. You're blocking his view clearly with dynamite. He's got to literally work in the shadows of Zach Bruell. No, that's a tough spot. Accent was there for a year, totally different situation, I know, but like these developments that we keep hearing about, these new developments,
The developers have to share the risk. They actually should be taking more of the lion's share of the risk, because we're the ones going to the bank, if you can go to the bank, or find the capital. The failure rate is 90% in the first 6 months. The way the restaurant industry works, it's high risk, low return. Well, usually if there's high risk, it's high return.
Right.
It's a crazy industry.
And yet everyone keeps coming to chefs and restaurants for free handouts. Every donation, everything.
Well, yeah.
You don't see them going to lawyers and doctors, do you? Asking for gift certificates and stuff? Isn't that ironic? Think about that.
Unfortunately, I have to go to lawyers and doctors too.
Keep you out of trouble.
But I'm not asking for handouts.
Send lawyers, guns, and money. I love talking about Yelp. It's one of my favorite things. I find it. I know you're not a social media guy, but I'm sure you have people for that. So I think like that, along with like the rise of quick casual and all that, social media came about in our recent lifetime. I mean, when I started doing that, there was no Facebook, certainly no Instagram, no Yelp. These are ways, when you probably started, and certainly even when you started at Parallax, in order for people to find out about you is either word of mouth, of course, or you had to wait around for somebody to write about you. And even when they did, that meant someone had to go find that newspaper and pick it up and read it.
You had to hope that they wrote something good about you.
Or you advertise.
But the people that are writing in print, like yourself, are professionals.
Do you hear that? Mom?
You sign, yeah, I'll tell your mom that. But you sign your name to it.
Right.
That's something different than Yelp. Yelp can be some anonymous diner. Everybody's a reviewer now. Yelp, to me, is very dangerous because we put our hands, our work in your hands and hope that you understand it. Mm-hmm. And I know that you do. But now we're putting our work in thousands of people's hands, and not everybody understands. Now, I don't expect every diner to understand what we do. I also understand in this lifetime that everything that I put out is not going to be perfect. I let go of that perfection thing.
When you started playing golf.
Well, I started at age 4. Now, I let go of that when I sold Z. I knew that to do perfection, the people around you do not understand, are not going to understand that. And the customers, by and large, won't understand that. So if you can do something that's really consistently good, people will come. But there are always going to be flaws.
No, and the flip side of that is social media helps you reach the customer directly in ways you couldn't before. And so that means, you or your social media people can pop out those wonderful, food porn shots on Instagram and go, oh, I'm going to go there for dinner tonight, or
I'm not a social media guy. I mean, I just do what I do, and I'm still of the belief I've been doing this 42 years now, that if you're good at what you do, they're going to come. I mean, I've been fortunate that in this town, people have followed me. But I really am of the belief that if you're good at what you do, they will come, as long as you just stay the path.
I agree.
Okay. With that, we are enjoying a Friday forum featuring chef and restaurateur Zach Bruell in conversation with dining editor and New York Times best-selling cookbook author Doug Trattner. We are about to head into the Q&A. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, students, or those of you joining us via our radio broadcast, or new live simulcast at the Parma Snow branch of the Cuyahoga County Public Library. If you'd like to tweet a question using social media, please tweet it at the City Club, and our staff will try and work it into the program. We encourage you to make sure your questions are brief and to the point, and actually questions. Holding the microphones today are Content Coordinator Teddy Eisenberg and Marketing and Outreach Coordinator Faye Walker. May we have the first question, please?
Yes, this is for either of you. As you know, a lot of times immigrants come to this country and they tend to start their own restaurants, family-owned. What role do you see them playing in the new Cleveland?
Ethnic restaurants are my favorite. I mean, Chinatown, Asiatown is my favorite place to go. The favorite thing for me is finding, these small, wonderful mom and pop places and sharing that news with other people who are interested in trying new things. And for sure, they have been economic drivers for those folks for a long, long time. And we're fortunate in Cleveland that we still have affordable real estate to do so. In some cities, in many cities, those people have been pushed out by celebrity chefs and other people, and so they're losing their income. I saw and had the pleasure of speaking to Jonathan Gold from LA and his amazing documentary of City of Gold, and I recommend it. It's fortunately, like I said, fortunately we have the room and the space and the dining populace to support those people, and you should do that.
Thanks very much for coming and providing us with fine dining in Cleveland. A couple questions. First one, have you considered incorporating the gratuity charges in in the meal charges, as some places in New York have done? And the other, could you absorb a $15 minimum wage for your employees?
Perfect
Per hour.
question. Thank you. So, $15 an hour minimum wage in Cleveland will make things very difficult. And I want to preface this with the fact that I don't pay people minimum wage. People that start with me do not start at minimum wage, and I don't want them working at minimum wage. But minimum wage to me is just a starting point, even if that was. If minimum wage was $15 an hour, then the dishwashers would be making that. The line cooks now would be making $20 to $25 an hour. And that's without overtime. So the economics are such that as an owner, I would have to pass that on to the customer. Now, the problem with the market here is you could only pass so much on. The bottom line in the restaurant industry is if you're doing 10%, you're doing good. Well, 10% is not a lot. That $15 an hour will absorb that 10%. So I believe what will happen is it'll put a lot of restaurants out of business. Now, the way to absorb as the owner that $15 an hour, and what they've done, what Danny Meyer has done in New York, is gotten rid of tipping and added it on to the price of a meal, and then distributed the money himself amongst the staff. But the problem with that is the service staff loses that incentive. And I know for a fact that they've had problems in a lot of his restaurants now where they have instituted that. So,
and only Danny Meyer, or very few people, can get away with raising the price of all their menu items 15, 20, sometimes 25%.
Well, he just sold Shake Shack, or it went public. He's part of Open Table. It's very difficult to make money in my industry. Now, $15 an hour, I don't want to get into a political discussion, but one of the ways for the central part of the city of Cleveland to grow is for the businesses to move back down in it. Okay, all those businesses, all those law firms that moved out to the suburbs, why would they have an incentive to come back to downtown Cleveland if they can operate in the suburbs for less money? Thusly, the restaurants depend on them. That's the last piece of this renaissance that's going on in Cleveland, is that the businesses would move back down into the city. It's a great question. Last week at the RNC, I was walking around the city, and my staff, which is all younger than me, they went, it's craziness out on the streets. It's so busy. And I looked at them and said, you know something? This is how downtown Cleveland used to be. This is how busy it used to be down here. This is how much traffic used to be down here. So if you take that $15 an hour minimum wage, whatever renaissance has happened will come to a screeching halt. It's up to us to provide jobs for people that they can make money at, that they can make a really good income at. And that's what I do. That's what I want to do. I want my staff to make as much money as they can, because if they do, they aren't leaving me. Goes back to that burnout I had in my first lifetime.
Hi, Zach. I wonder if you can just speak a little bit to the impact and perhaps the creative challenges that you've encountered in what seems like a sea change in diner preferences. And I'm talking about gluten-free, talking about vegan, paleo, and probably the other 25 other food preferences that come up. But how big of a deal has that been in your industry? And I personally want to thank you for providing some great vegan options at some of your restaurants. Thank you.
Well, in my first lifetime, if somebody had no one had allergies.
Shocking.
We grew up eating mud. We were playing in the garden eating mud. Well, I guess people don't do that anymore. So there's this allergy, there's that allergy. It's like, okay, I can't have this, I can't have that. You do what you can. I mean, these are customers. I keep talking about my last lifetime, but my last lifetime, there was a wall. It wasn't an open kitchen, so I could go off in the kitchen. You might hear it behind the wall. It's like, what is going on here?
Now you have your screaming room.
Now I have this open kitchen, so I can't scream. It's like I learned, just do what they want. Just give them what they want. You need them to come back. And that's one of the things that I preach to my staff. It's like, give them what they want. If they send something back, it doesn't matter. It's money out of my pocket. It's not money out of the cook's pocket. It's like, give them what they want. So that's what you have to do with all of these preferences, I would call it.
I would be grateful if you would pick a particular restaurant and help me understand it. To use your phrase, many people who come to a restaurant don't understand the subliminal message, the maybe overarching passion, the mission. Use whatever word you wish, but pick a restaurant and help me understand it. And I want to cheat a little bit by asking you, as you do so, to talk a little bit about how easy it is to talk in a restaurant, sound level.
Well, so you're talking about restaurant design. I've been fortunate that I've had the opportunity to work with two of the best architects in the city of Cleveland, Bill Blunden and Ron Reed. Now, in my first restaurant, Z, in Tower East, the acoustics were terrible. It was all flat surfaces. It was a wall of glass, leather chairs. And I was young, and I was very stubborn. And I realized that I had created a bandbox. And I also realized that I didn't realize then, because I was too young, that people weren't coming just for the food. To me, that restaurant was just about the food, i.e., it was about me. But I did know that I had to make some compromises. But if you don't think about the acoustics in a restaurant when you design it, it's a struggle afterwards. So fast forward to the year 2004, and I opened Parallax with Ron Reed. And if you've been to that restaurant, there are these pillows in the ceiling, hanging from the ceiling. And it's all about the acoustics. People are attracted to the energy of a restaurant. That's what brings them initially. But they want to be able to talk, and they want to be able to be heard. It's not about just the food. It's about an event. And the acoustics are part of it. There's two things to me that are the most important part: the acoustics and the lighting.
Hi, I'm curious as to what childhood influences you had that got you interested in cooking. How old were you then, and where did you get your formal education for cooking?
I had a grandmother that was an incredible cook, but summertime, my parents would tell me, go outside and light the grill. So I'd go outside and light this charcoal grill, and I was a pyromaniac, so I'd be standing there with the the lighter, and
It explains the eyebrows.
Yeah. But no, I wasn't supposed to do what I do. I was sent to the Wharton School of Finance. And when I went to Wharton, it was the first time in my life that I had never, it was the first time in my life that I had eaten cafeteria food. In high school, I always brown bagged it. And I would watch these other kids eating this fried food thinking, this is great. Well, after the second week at Wharton, it was like, this food is terrible. The second semester I went there, I told my father, just give me the money and I'll fend for myself. There was an extra room in this quad dorm that I lived in, and there was a kid down the hall that had a toaster oven. I had a hot plate. We would go out and shop every day and cook in this room. The rest of the kids in the hallway would watch us eat. I gained 10 pounds that semester. That's how I started cooking. When I graduated from college, I went to a small school called the Restaurant School in Philadelphia for, I could use a word, but I won't use it, for people like me that wanted to open small fine dining restaurants. And that's the extent of my formal education. Chefs, cooking for a living is an ongoing quest for knowledge. It's something, it's like golf. You can't perfect it.
How important do you think formal culinary education is these days?
It's a basis, it's a starting point. But at $50,000 or $60,000 a year for the Culinary Institute of America, they're a business and they want to convince the people that are graduating from there that they're coming out and they're a chef.
Right, and those people come to you for a job and expect to be paid commensurately, correct?
Exactly, and we just sort of look at them and go, okay, you can work in the salad station and we'll pay you $12 an hour.
Like everybody else.
And we'll teach you.
Why couldn't they just come there in the first place and forego that debt?
I think it gives you a basis. It's an expensive basis.
Hi, thank you for your talk today. I'm wondering what you are doing in your restaurants, and Doug, what you know of other restaurants in the Cleveland area that are doing to increase the diversity of their staff. I'm not a foodie, I'm not a critic, I'm just a restaurant goer, and I see a lot of very white servers and a lot of very people of color doing back of the house kind of things, and it's prevalent in that even my children notice it who are 4 and 7. So I'm just wondering if you have done things about that. I don't know about your restaurant specifically. I'm just asking what restaurateurs are doing.
We're pretty diverse. We're extremely diverse. Color means nothing to me. It's willingness to work and willingness to learn. That's all. Beyond that, color means nothing. So if it's in the front of the house or the back of the house, doesn't matter. I mean, we as Americans, you were talking about immigrants that are coming to this country, and they want to work. They want to open up their own businesses. Well, they have this work ethic where this generation, it's a generational thing. It's not a color thing. This generation doesn't necessarily have the work ethic that my generation had. And my generation, for myself, my parents or my father passed on a work ethic that was from the 30s and 40s. So I have a different mindset, and not everybody can handle that.
Yeah, I feel like when I worked every job in the restaurant, that's what you did. That was your first job was, bussing tables, dishwashing, all that stuff. And are you finding that you're not getting the same kind of people that used to do those jobs?
It's just diluted. It's the people that would come to me when I opened Parallax, they had done it before. Now the people that are coming to me, they haven't done it before. Now the front of the house, we have bus help, we have runners, we have servers, we have bar people. So the way the system works is you start out as a busser. If you don't have experience, you move up to a runner working next to me, and then you become a server. And to me, that's old school, and that's if you come in expecting to start at the top, it just doesn't work that way. Goes back to, going to culinary school.
And thinking that you're now a celebrity chef.
It doesn't work that way in any business.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for coming in. What do you think about the future with technology in the hospitality business and operational side, and what's some of your biggest pain points that technology can assist you with and maybe automate or make lives easier so better service?
Well, you're talking to the wrong person about that. I'm the consulting chef for the Burnham at the Hilton, and the equipment that I've been afforded to work with there is equipment that I could never afford to buy in my own restaurant.
Are you talking kitchen equipment? Or?
Kitchen equipment. It makes things so much easier. But as an independent operator, number one, you need the space. Number two, you need the money to pay for it, which there's that balancing.
Well, I could say as a diner, when somebody, instead of a sommelier or a wine expert coming up to me to help me, they hand me an iPad.
I don't
go
like
to town. That's an example where technology, I feel like, is a fail. And I mean, it depends on the restaurant, it depends on the setting, it depends on how that technology is used. But I'm sorry if, that's an example that I feel like, if we're talking about a really fast casual restaurant where they don't have servers and stuff and you're ordering at a kiosk, great example of using technology. That's what everybody wants. They want speed, efficiency. We want to know that our order's going in correctly. But when it replaces that connection, when that connection is useful and appreciated, then I feel like it's a fail.
Part of dining are these human connections. That's what people want, I believe. Pardon? Well, even if they're paid the minimum wage, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't have the knowledge. If you're going to open a restaurant, you can't fake it. You have to have the knowledge. And that's faking it to me.
Hi, Zach. As someone who runs a culinary school, an affordable one, I want to thank you for hiring many of our graduates. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about creating the way that you create that synergy between culinary schools and your restaurants, where the culinary schools take on the burden of, some of that basic technique, basic terminology, so that you can add your restaurant finesse when they get out and mold them to what you're looking for.
Well, thank you for providing those people, because it's harder for us to stop. We're an ongoing show. It just doesn't, there's no let up. So if we need to teach somebody knife skills, that's going to slow us down. And we don't have that luxury to slow down. We can't tell the customer, oh, sorry, we're going to go at our pace tonight. It just doesn't work that way. But once again, it's just you're teaching them the basic skills, basic knife skills. How do you julienne something? How do you brunoise something? How do you make chicken stock? It's nice to know that somebody has those skills so you could say, okay, I need you to make some chicken stock. Here's how I make it. Here's the basic ingredients that I have in chicken stock. Do that for me, please, instead of us having to stop and stand over them. We are teachers. We're still teaching, and we always will. If the learning process never stops. It never stops for me. I'm always trying to learn more. Basically, one of the reasons I've gotten to the whatever level I'm at is because I believe that I don't know enough. I believe that what I do is not really good, that I need to improve. It's like golf. It's the same way.
When you look at a lot of the other big cities where there are really famous restaurants, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, there's a lot that are dedicated to tasting menus and expensive tasting menus. And I know that was tried with Trentina here in Cleveland, and maybe didn't go so well. So in your opinion, does Cleveland need to get to that point where we have restaurants that are doing exclusive tasting menus, or can we sort of bypass that and let that go to the larger cities?
I did that in my last lifetime. That first restaurant was a temple. It was as pure as it could get. It was something that you could have put down in Los Angeles, New York City, or Paris. This lifetime, I've made a concerted effort to remove the tablecloths, to make it so that people want to come out once, twice, 3 times a week to one of my restaurants. When you do that, you're setting yourself up to, in a market like this, either special occasion dining, which is you're doomed if you do that, or basically business dining, and at that point you're following the waves of the economy.
It's not the way people like to eat these days, and in cities like San Francisco and Chicago, New York, you can get away with it because there are so many diners and the ones who, and tourists, when I go to other cities, that's maybe how I'll dine.
Exactly.
But very few people want to sit down for a 3-hour meal anymore. I mean, it's just, we want a bar hop, we want to do appetizers here and drinks there, and
I just
around.
don't think, it's like you get home from work, you look at your spouse and you go, oh, let's drop over to Linea and have dinner tonight. I just don't think that, for me, that's not what I'm trying to do anymore. And if you go to Europe, a lot of the Michelin 3-star chefs, they got away from that. They wanted to serve the real people. I want to serve the younger generation. That's the future. Those are the people that are going to be filling my restaurants 10 years from now. And if I do something like that, I'm not going to get them on a regular basis, if I get them at all.
How many restaurants will you have in 10 years?
That's a bad question.
As our neighborhoods are changing and rents are increasing, what are some things that you look for in your leases that would help you be successful?
Well, no CAM charges, no nickel and diming. I mean, the landlord has to take a burden of the risk also, not just me. The rent, the nut has to be something. When we open a restaurant, we do break-even analysis, we do projections. I want to know, if things go bad, can we survive? So obviously it's the rent. That's the most important part. And what is the landlord willing to contribute to the project? Because I know that I'm going to improve the value of their building. In the end, when a landlord flips the building, that's when they've made their money. Or that should be the mindset, that the restaurant is going to be the anchor for the building, and that maybe if there are other tenants in the building, lawyers, doctors, et cetera, that can afford, that are working off of a higher margin, that they're the ones that are paying the nut for the landlord. But in the end, the landlord is going to be the one that is going to make the lion's share of the money. 10% is nothing, considering the risk.
Hi, my question is for Doug. As a reviewer and someone who brings new restaurants to light for the rest of us, I would like to know what your approach is, your philosophy, how you view your role in sort of a make or break kind of state. And my second question is, have you done it so long now that you can go into a new place and say, this isn't going to work?
I'll address the second part first. I'm not in New York, I'm not in Washington. I wear 2 hats. I'm both the restaurant critic and the food editor, the dining editor. And the dining editor's job is very different from the restaurant critic's job. the dining editor, I write about new places. I do walkthroughs, I do previews, I do interviews, I do features, So the jig is up, as they say, But it wasn't always. And in fact, I did a really good job before Facebook, and even at the beginning of Facebook, being pretty anonymous. I mean, people would not spot, people did not know who I was, what I looked like. It started to change when I started doing books and stuff. But yeah, it's a small town. It's Cleveland, and it doesn't change the way I evaluate dining experiences. And people don't treat me differently. I don't think so. Zach is not all of a sudden going to be able, be a better chef, and his waiter is not all of a sudden going to be a better waiter. In fact, they tend to be lousy waiters when they do know who I am, because they fawn over you and it's annoying. Yeah, I feel like my job and we talked about the bloggers and maybe the difference between what I do and what some bloggers do. Some are great. Some Yelpers are really good and they're useful as heck. But it's context. I have been doing it a long time. I do travel. I know. And it's the question is always, what are they trying to do and how are they and are they succeeding at it? Are you at an authentic taco shop? How good are your tacos? Are you using flour tortillas? Are you kidding me? It's what are you doing and how good are you at it? And the first part of your question is, the best part of my job is sharing, great little places with people. I only do, like I said, these big flashy restaurants when they open, and I never go back to them. Sorry, but I'm off to the next place, and the next place, and the next place. And I love finding those little places and sharing them. I love the new places. I love, sharing stories about the ethnic, the places, and just scouring the marketplace for places. And because without me and people like me telling everybody to go eat there, it's tough these days.
Today at the City Club, we've been enjoying a Friday forum with chef and restaurateur Zach Bruell in conversation with dining editor and New York Times best-selling cookbook author Doug Trattner. Community partner for today's forum is Edible Cleveland. We thank you for your support and partnership. And that brings us to the end of today's forum. Thank you, Mr. Bruell, Mr. Trattner. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream are made possible by the generous support of PNC and the Raskin Family Fund, with additional funding from Cleveland State University, Robert Conrad, and the Payne Fund.